You're tuned in to Getting to the Root of It, focusing on healing and letting go of the wounds of addiction and other unresolved traumas of the past. Your breakthrough begins with you. Are you ready to change your life? Stay tuned as your host, expert therapist, personal development coach, and spiritual cheerleader, Natashah Khan, inspires you to live the life you were destined to live.
Hi, this episode of Getting to the Root of It is sponsored by the Chosen Ones Coaching Academy. The founder, creator, and owner, Dr. Nicole Ouzounian, is a life coach working with individuals to help them find the warrior within. If you would like to get in touch with Dr. Nicole Ouzounian, she can be reached via email at dr.nicouz@gmail.com. That's dr.nicouz@gmail.com. You don't want to miss this opportunity. All right. Hi, everyone. This is Natashah, and welcome back to Getting to the Root of It. Hopefully, you guys have already listened to episode 1, where I gave you guys my testimony, and you were able to hear a little bit of my background and what were the different contributing factors to lead me into addiction, and some of the things that I needed to do to be able to live a life of recovery. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the first episode. If you have not checked out episode 4 yet, it is coming, and I hope that you listen to it. I had my very first special guest, Dr. Nicole Ouzounian, on episode 4, where we talked a lot about mindset. We talked a lot about spiritual warfare. And we had such a great conversation last time that I invited Dr. Nicole Ouzounian back now. This is going to be episode 5, where she is going to be able to share with you and talk to you a little bit about relationships. Today, our focus wants to be more on knowing the signs of a narcissist and knowing about understanding how a narcissist tends to seek out women of faith, women of power. I'm going to have her get more into that in just a little bit. So I hope you guys can sit back and hopefully take some notes and be able to learn so much more about how sometimes, no matter how strong, no matter how powerful you are, if we are not mindful, if we are not spiritually strong, how easily that we can to be fooled by others. So let's welcome Dr. Nicole Ouzounian. How are you?
Hi, Natashah. Thank you for having me again. I'm very excited and nervous, but I'm so grateful to be here today. So thanks for asking me.
Of course, always. Now, can you share with everyone, when I asked you to come back on again, what was at the heart of you wanting to have this conversation?
Okay. So I reached out to Natashah probably last week, and I said, I got a topic. And she's like, why? What happened? I said, okay. I said, well, I just finally ended a horrible relationship that I've been trying to get out of for a year. And some really dark situations happened over the past 2 weeks. And it's almost like God was showing me a lot more truth into the resistance that I was having following what he wanted for me. And it was like everything rushed. And I said, you know what, Natashah? We as women of God and women of faith, we can never let nothing be for nothing. And we have to use our challenges, number one, to grow from. And if we can educate other people with our experiences, what better way to do this? So I know that you've met this person. And so basically, prior to me meeting this person, I had just left a not so good relationship. And I had been single for quite some time. And one of my biggest fears that I've had since I was 15 was I never want to be alone, and I know people are like, well, wait a minute, Nicole, you teach independence and you teach all of these amazing spiritual things and this and that. I said, well, yeah, but I'm also human. And we all have an Achilles heel and we all have a weakness. And one of my weaknesses is relationships.
You're not alone, by the way, in that, people say the same thing of me, and they're like, you seem so confident and you seem so sure of yourself. And, why would you be insecure? And I'm like, well, like you, my Achilles heel is relationships. And for whatever reason, I can overcome so many other obstacles in my life. But when it comes to matters of the heart, it's a difficult bridge to cross.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of what happened. I ended up meeting this guy, and he was probably one of the most charming men I've ever met. He knew exactly what to say to me. He knew how to say it. He was painting this picture of everything I've ever looked for. He was beautiful. He was strong. He was smart. He was in recovery, a man of God, all of these things that, we look for. And I was hooked. It was like, that to me was like the devil's candy. We talk about opiates and substances being the devil's candy. Well, for me, he was the devil's candy. So I decided to jump into this relationship, and we started dating. The first red flag that I got was a month after we started dating. So I had reminded, because he asked me when my birthday was. So I told him when my birthday was a couple of times. He asked me, and when the day of my birthday came, I never got a happy birthday. I never, received anything. It was like, I knew he forgot, which was fine because we were only 1 month in the relationship. So jokingly, I basically let him know, I reminded him, hey, it's my birthday, but I'm going to give you a pass because we're so new in the relationship. And it wasn't a joke to him. He took it very personal. He became very mad at me. He started ripping me apart, saying, why would you, not remind me? Why would you say it this way? So it was almost like he felt bad for forgetting the birthday, but he blamed me for him forgetting. So that was the first flag. And I couldn't understand that, because I'm like, I was joking. Why is he freaking out?
Why is it so personal?
Right. But I slid it under the rug, because this was the man of my dreams. As I continued with the relationship, I've always gone to the gym. For those of you who know me, I still train in martial arts. I train 4 to 5 times a week. It's my other passion. So I'm always in the gym. So at first I would send him pictures of me at the gym with my nunchucks, and my bow staff and all that. He's like, that's awesome. That's great. About 2 months into the relationship, I started getting messages from him saying, well, why are you going to the gym so often? What are you wearing? Why do you have to wear this? Why can't you wear that? You should be wearing t-shirts, big baggy t-shirts. Don't wear yoga pants. So he started now trying to control, number one, me going to the gym, and number two, what I was wearing at the gym. Now, this is where the FG comes in, right? Or
before you get into the FG, and so you can explain to our loyal listeners out there what the FG is. I hear this part of your story, and for our listeners out there, I want everyone to pay close attention. Like, to know Nicole is she's such an amazing, brilliant, talented, gifted, skilled woman. There's so much strength in you, Dr. Nicole Ouzounian, and working with you for so many years, I have to say, I find it hard to believe that, and if it's fair to say that you allowed for that level of control. Can you maybe give listeners a better understanding of, with a woman with such power, with a woman with such strength, with a woman with so strong in her faith with the Lord, and I understand that there was this checklist, right, for the man of your dreams, and he, you checked everything on the checklist. If you saw that he was attempting to control, why not stop it at that moment?
I didn't care. My fear of being alone, and I felt at the time that the other positive qualities that he had outweighed all of this. I figured, to be honest with you, I could eventually persuade him and convince him that I'm a very loyal person and you don't have to be worried about these things. And as he gets to know me through time, everything will be fine.
It will change.
It will change, right? So what in the manipulative tactics of a narcissist, it's crazy. It's like, we know, we can't change other people. And here I am saying, I can change it, and I'm not realizing, holy crap, he's actually changing me. and it was happening. And Natashah knows this. I ended up going to church with her in Delray, and I took him with me, which he was very uncomfortable there. And I literally walked in. I couldn't say hi to anybody. I didn't even finish the church service before he pretty much grabbed me and bolted. And I'm like, I didn't even get to say hi to any of my friends. And he questioned me why I shook people's hands, especially if they were male. He was questioning my friends. So at this point, what he was trying to do was take me away from all of my friends. And Natashah and I have been, really great friends for quite some time at this point. And all of a sudden, I got to a position where I'm not calling all my friends anymore. I'm not seeing them anymore. I'm going to move into his house. I gave up my family. I gave up my friends. I gave up my house. I quit my job.
And that happened in a span of how many weeks?
Wow. Natashah, I met him in September of 2020. By December 2020, he proposed. I had moved in by March 2021. So this probably happened around November, December, when I saw you at church that day with him.
So I want our listeners to understand and hear this well. This is a very educated woman. For all the women, for all the people that are out there, and this isn't just for women, this is for men as well, right? Because we don't just have men that are narcissists, we also have women that are narcissists, right?
Correct.
And we're doing this episode because we want people to hear loud and clear that no matter how brilliant you are, no matter how talented you are, no matter how strong you think you are, Nicole said something very, very important that I don't want anyone to miss. You said the fear of being alone outweighed all of that intelligence. It outweighed all of the knowledge, everything that you may have spent your life sharing and teaching to other individuals, right? Yep. And so Nicole's going to get in explaining what she refers to as the FG. And for those listeners out there that know Nicole, are familiar with the FG. So she's going to explain that a little bit to help us understand how our feelings, whether it be guilt, whether it be shame, in this particular case, it's fear, is so strong that it was really, really difficult to battle it at that time.
Sure. So I'm gonna control my potty mouth. But the FG is basically the F in Goblin, AKA Satan, dark energy, the dark side of the force. So the dark side, being in spiritual warfare, which we're in all the time, it's usually, once you kind of know its tactics, it comes at you a little bit different. So it knows me intimately. So it knows my weakness. And it knew the exact kind of profile of a man to bring into my life, that would basically switch from my higher power being God and the Lord to my higher power being this man. Mm. And I literally put this man on such a pedestal, and he became my higher power. And I thought that if I just, don't argue with him, if I don't, resist what he's asking me to do, we're gonna, go into the freaking sunset together. And the more I started giving in to what he was asking me to do, the more I was losing myself. So as we continue down this relationship, it even now it's even getting bigger, to where he's not letting me use my phone at certain times. He made me delete 90% of the male contacts that I had in my phone, which is quite a bit because I've been in this industry for a long time and many of them are male. Not only did I have to block them, I had to delete them as he hovered over me while I was doing this. It was very scary, but at the same time, I wanted this relationship to work so bad, I was willing to pretty much do anything. And my brain was saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? But my heart and my fear was saying, no, it's going to be okay. You're going to marry this man. He's going to be your husband. You have to be able to work together. But what I wasn't seeing was we're not working together. I was the only one making these shifts and changes. So one of the things about a narcissist is they need constant validation, because they have such a lack the ability to feel, right? That they can't really feel emotion for a long period of time. So if I were to tell him, wow, babe, I think you're doing great, he would hear it for a second and then it would go out his mind. So it's constant validation. And for him, by me basically giving into what he wanted me to do, it validated for him that I loved him.
And is it fair to say that in that moment when you give the compliment, because, as Nicole knows, I too was married to a narcissist as well, right? And I'm recently divorced. And I found that when I gave those compliments, he would hear it for the moment. And you're right, it would go away. But then his mind he would go into this place of, well, why did she give me a compliment? Is she hiding something? Did I do wrong? And he starts to have this negative perspective. He just goes into this negative mindset. And that's what most oftentimes started the arguments or the accusations or the allegations that I was doing something wrong. And I gave him this compliment almost as a way to cover up some sort of wrongdoing. Did you experience that?
Oh, 100%. It was like the more I tried to make him happy, the more he looked for things that I was doing wrong to validate that I didn't love him, because they have a hard time believing that people actually love them. So this is when he started going through my phone and going through my emails. And if there was a text message to a male, asking a question in regards to work, he'd be like, who is this? Who is that? And I would get literally yelled at because I was conversing with a male, whether it was work related or not. I wasn't allowed to have any male friends at all, let alone female friends. And then there was one day I started with a new company and I was invited to go to a holiday party. I just started with the organization. So I told him, listen, December 13th, there's a holiday party. We're going out to dinner, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he started cutting down. And this is another sign. What narcissists do is they will badmouth other people to make themselves more superior. And so what he did was he basically called everybody I was working with losers, scumbags. And I'm looking at him like, you don't even know these people. And he hounded me every day until I said I wouldn't go. So my colleagues were like, well, why aren't you going? And I had to lie. I had to make up excuses because I knew it was pathetic, right? And I knew what I was doing was wrong, so I didn't want anybody to know. So now I started keeping secrets of all the things that were going on in the home and in my personal life, because I projected and I'm presenting in a way that I'm this strong, independent woman, but behind closed doors, I'm literally this emotionally and psychologically abused woman that didn't want anybody to know that.
And as a result, it causes you, it contributes to you not living with integrity. You're now becoming dishonest. You're being secretive. You're hiding behind this wall. And it goes everything that you believe in God and who God is and how powerful God is and how strong God is and what God can do for you in that moment. It's amazing to hear the story. And I'm so grateful for you getting raw and honest with us, because I think a lot of people are fearful to admit, to own the fact that they that they get sucked in, or they get manipulated, or they get fooled by someone. So I'm just appreciative of you sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Can you go into some of the traits that we can become more aware of? What are the signs or the traits that we need to look for to know that someone is a narcissist?
Well, the first and foremost one is they have a very strong superiority and entitlement complex. Okay, so they have to be the best of everything. When you're with a narcissist, everything has to be about them. You have to always let them know that they are the center of your world. And if you're not, or if you have other passions in your life, they don't like that, because having that passion with something else, it takes away, your passion for them, because they don't understand that you can have passion for multiple things. They're very one-dimensional. So that's the main one. We've talked about the validation, needing constant validation. They're also perfectionists, and they expect perfectionism in you. not just with behavior, but also with what you look like. You know, he was a Latin guy, and he had always been with a little bit heavier and bigger women than me. So he would feed me, and he would make sure that I would eat more than I wanted to, because he wanted me to put on weight, because in his mind, he had an idea of what a perfect woman looked like. And that's kind of how he wanted me to be. He wouldn't let me cut my hair. I remember once I got blonde highlights in my hair, and I sent him a picture after I was finished at the salon, and he ripped me apart. Why didn't you tell me you were doing that? It looks like crap. He used other words, by the way. You know, this ages you. This does this does that. And I'm like, dude, I just got highlights. Like, you know? So I immediately am like, oh my gosh. So I literally, after the salon, I bought a box of hair color at Walgreens, and I dyed my hair dark again. You know, and it's just, everything has to be perfect in their eyes. Great need for control, having to control what I wear. I remember Fridays were jeans day at work. And so I came home from work one day, and he didn't see what I was wearing when I left, and I was wearing jeans. He didn't like how tight they were. And I had to sit there for half an hour and listen to how I was trying to get people to look at me because of the jeans that I had on. And I was such a bad girlfriend, and I wasn't loyal, you know, because I'm wearing jeans that fit me, right? They have a complete lack of responsibility. There's no reasoning with a narcissist. You can't logically have a conversation with them because they're not logical. So I would come in and I would try to help him understand, like, when you talk like this is how it makes me feel, you know, and he wouldn't hear it. He wouldn't hear anything that I would have to say. And if I would try to state my case, I would immediately get shut down on how I was wrong. So they don't take responsibility for anything. They have no boundaries at all. Your phone is their phone. Your iPad is their
yeah.
Nothing was mine. I remember once Natashah, you don't know this, Natashah had texted me if I was okay or something like that. Well, he read it and he's like, what are you telling your friends about me? I'm like, nothing. They're seeing it, right. You know? And with someone who works for the light side of the force, what I started noticing is this man, I was allowing this man to bring out the worst of me. My dark started coming back out, and I worked so hard to transform my soul, and I was quickly regressing back. And for me, one of my big issues is depression. I've struggled with major depressive disorder my whole life. And I started noticing myself getting back into old ways of thinking, and I was having suicidal ideations. It was like being in an energy every day in the house that was just very dark. And I felt almost like the dark was using him to get to me. You know, I left my spiritual sisters. I left a job that I was successful in. I quit my career. I began staying home and cleaning the house. I was his servant, you know.
He was stealing your light, right? He was
100%
taking that light from your life.
100%. The fights that we would get in, thank God they didn't get abusive, like physically abusive, but they were definitely heading down that path. And what basically happened is, after us being together for about 8 months, he relapsed. And he didn't tell me, but obviously I know the signs, you know. So after a month of him relapsing, I could see he had lost weight. His narcissism was actually becoming worse, obviously, because now he's throwing opiates into it. He started not coming home. Mind you, I sold my house. I left everything to move up north. You know, he was 90 miles away from where I originally lived. So I didn't really have anybody to go to, nor was I allowed to.
Right.
So he started following me around, And I'll never forget one day I ended up going to the gym and a guy opened the door for me. I said, thank you. And I got a text message and it said, I just saw him say thank you to you. And I'm like, dude, this guy's like following me now. And I got a really bad feeling in my stomach, almost like God saying, you need to get out and you need to get out now.
Absolutely.
So I ran home and I grabbed a backpack and I got my car and I went and stayed at my parents' house. So he ended up going on a full-fledged run. I lost contact with him for a couple of weeks. I was devastated because I still didn't register that he's not good for me. My mind was saying, I'm in the field, I'm a therapist, I know this disease, I sit there and I help thousands of people all the time, to try to evolve into their higher self. How can I just leave this man? I help strangers all the time. I can't leave. I have to be there to help him. So
let me ask this question real quick, then hopefully you don't lose your train of thought. Is it really that the mindset is really, can I leave him? Or why would I leave him? Or is the mindset still, I'm still stuck on, because I can relate to your story so much and I've been there. It comes back to the core issue that I'm fearful of being alone. I'm at a point in my life where I want to be married. I want to have this happy life. I have sort of these expectations, which, my program always tells me don't have expectations. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to sacrifice whatever needs to be sacrificed because I'm getting older and I don't want to be alone, right?
Sure.
So, I guess at the end of the day, my question is it really about, I don't want to leave him because I've been in the field and helping other people? Or is it because I don't want to leave him because of my own insecurities and or my own fear of being by myself and not being able to be in a relationship?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this important message from our sponsor.
Hi, my name is Dr. Nicole Ouzounian, and I am the author of The Chosen Ones, An Addict's Guide to Their True Purpose. The reason I decided to write this book was to kind of give a different perspective on the idea of addiction. I do believe it's a spiritual war, and I believe that people who struggle with addiction are actually the chosen ones that have to make a choice between either living on the dark side or the light side within this world. What I do is I train people on the tactics of how the dark seeks our destruction, and I train people how to become in alignment with their true soul. It's not my job to choose what life to live, but what I do is I guide people into looking at different perspectives of experiences that will help you decide where you want to go. I help people realize that they have the power of choice, and I help people not change who they are, but to actually become who they are. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about what I do, please feel free to email me at dr.nicouz@gmail.com. Thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Is it really that the mindset is really, can I leave him? Or why would I leave him? Or is the mindset still, I'm still stuck on, because I can relate to your story so much and I've been there. It comes back to the core issue that I'm fearful of being alone. I'm at a point in my life where I want to be married. I want to have this happy life. I have sort of these expectations, which, my program always tells me don't have expectations. And so I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to sacrifice whatever needs to be sacrificed because I'm getting older and I don't want to be alone, right?
Sure.
So, I guess at the end of the day, my question is it really about, I don't want to leave him because I've been in the field and helping other people? Or is it because I don't want to leave him because of my own insecurities and or my own fear of being by myself and not being able to be in a relationship?
Probably both.
Okay.
For me, it was probably both. When you've kind of accepted the fact that, one of the things about light workers is that we're able to see the light in everybody. I see it, I feel it, and it's my passion to be like, okay, well, let's explore the truth of who you are, your core, your true self, not the self that you became as a result of your experiences, right? So what I learned is that I fell in love with his potential. And I was going to make him, live his potential. And obviously I didn't. And what happened was, as I was trying to break free, he would always try to bring me back. And again, it would always start charming, because this is how narcissists work. When they know they no longer have control, the manipulation and the tactics that they use are just masterful. And being sick myself at the time, and so exposed to this darkness, I was exhausted. Now I'm homeless because I don't have a home anymore. I don't have a job. And I'm like, crap, what did I do? And even all of that, Natashah, there was still hope in the back of my mind that things would change and we would still move forward and get married. So this is the sickness, right? So my family couldn't stand him, obviously, because they saw me deteriorating. And my friends, including you, couldn't stand him, right? Because you saw me deteriorating. But you don't hear it. You don't hear it. You don't see it. You don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear from you that he's not good for me, because I know him. I know him better than you. And I was lying to myself. And about a year ago, I posted on Facebook that I left an abusive relationship. And that was him. And it's taken nearly a year once I left his house to fully separate from him. And it hasn't been easy, because again, they know what to do. They know what to say to lure you back. And unless you set a severely strong boundary, right? And usually cut them off if you can, if there's no children, if there's no assets, if there's no, any attachments that are forcing you to kind of communicate, it's really important that you can't change a narcissist. It won't happen, let alone a narcissist who's an IV, opiate user. It's not going to happen. So there was no emotional reasoning there. I now began to be a threat to him, right? Because now I'm exposing, the further I got away from him, the less his energy affected me. So when I was away from the environment that he was in, my mind would start to clear up. And I'm like, wait a second. So I would communicate with him, this isn't going to work. I'm moving forward. I'm looking for a job. I'm going to buy my own place. So now I'm starting to start a life without him, where he was threatened. So now what he would start to do is he would start sending me pictures, and I'm going to get a little bit more vulnerable. He would send pictures of a bunch of pills in his hand. And he would threaten me that I'm going to kill myself if you don't do this, that, or that. And my fear would skyrocket. Being in the industry, we know how many people die every day because of, fentanyl and IV drug use, any drug use at this point. Mm-hmm. And so literally seeing and hearing all of these people dying, all I kept getting is flashes of me getting information that he's dead. And I couldn't accept that.
Well, and that just adds to the fear, right? So I already have this fear of my own stuff. And now I have this fear, like I don't want to be responsible, or I don't want to be a part of why someone loses their life. Yep. Even though, there's that logical mind and there's that emotional mind, right? Even though my logical mind, we all love to make the statement, I know better, but emotionally, I don't want to live with the guilt. I don't want to live with the shame. I don't want to. So now you have all these compounded emotions now. And the reason why I highlight that, I want our listeners to understand that no matter how logical you can be about a situation, this is where, if we're not in touch with where we are emotionally, how the emotions can get the best of us. Our emotions can then consume us, and then our emotions are now making the decision or driving our decision-making process, right? So I think it's fair to say, as your emotions started to compound each other, it began to make the decision of why you stayed. It began to make the decision why you kept going back, even though the logical mind says, I need to stay away. There was an emotional part of you that was so overwhelmed with all the emotions that's what kept drawing you back into that relationship. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's also about the lessons that we're here to learn. And my big lesson when I was 15, I remember my first love, you know, he was also at that age, he was an alcoholic. You know, he was a cocaine user. He was a wreck. And I remember putting out in the universe and saying, you know, what is it, God, that you want me to do? And I got this thought, and I know it was a God thought, said, Nicole, you need to love yourself. And it's literally been these horrible, toxic relationships over and over again that are getting worse and worse and worse and worse, because God is trying to tell me, all right, you want to be this strong, independent, spiritual warrior. Well, this is your Achilles heel. I'm going to keep testing you with these men, and I'm going to see what you're going to do. And this was it. This was the final, I believe, this was the final test. You know, this man wanted me dead, and I knew it, and he almost succeeded. And in his mind, it didn't matter how his responses to me and his communication with me hurt me. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. You know, a narcissist usually is filled with such self-loathing and such shame, but it's so buried deep inside themselves that they don't even recognize that it's there. So their world is all external.
So let me ask you this, if you're able to get into this, where does these narcissistic traits stem from? What are some of the contributing factors? Is
Sure.
it relative to, is it a biological issue? Is it a psychological issue? Is it due to trauma? Combination of all? What do you believe from your clinical expertise that
Sure.
causes, you know, that brings on the narcissistic traits?
It's usually as a result, I can't speak for everybody. I'll just keep it on him right now. He grew up without a father. He grew up with a mother. One of his first memories that he remembers is his mother telling him, I never wanted you to be born, and I was actually going to throw you in a dumpster. He was sexually abused by his aunt, and the family was like, don't say anything. We're not going to say anything. You need to keep that to yourself. Because there was no structure in the home, he grew up on the streets of Rhode Island. He ended up joining a pretty pronounced gang at a young age, got very involved in the gang life, started doing drugs at a very young age, has a long history of being in prison, you know, so the trauma that goes on in there. I mean, it's a very sad story. And I think that's kind of what always touched my heart. Like, when and one of the things that he would always throw in my face is, everybody's always left me. I have no one. You know, you're the only one that I have. And when you're a healer and when you have such a capacity to love, it's like, wow, you know exactly what to say to keep me here.
Absolutely. You know, I can so relate to that with my relationship with my husband. We were together for 9 years. And for the last 4 years, he had, as you know, he had walked away from our marriage. And even in that 4-year stint, it always came back down to, as much as he went without speaking to me, as much as he was psychologically and verbally and emotionally abusive to me, there will always be that phone call that says, you're all that I have. You're the only one who's ever stood by me. And, you know, it's interesting because when I was going through my own addiction issues, I used to feel so alone.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't, but I felt so alone. So when he made those statements, like you said, as a healer, I'm like, well, I never want anyone to go through what I went through, right? I never want anyone to experience that feeling of loneliness. So I've got to stay with him. I've got to stay by him, right? And like you, I stood by for a very long time, and, you know, against my better judgment. For me, it was that feeling of, and I'm going to bring my faith into this. I believe that I'm here to serve, and I believe that I'm here to help. And I believe that with everything that I've been through, God has called me for something greater. So this man must have crossed my path and my life for a greater purpose. And how dare I turn my back on him? And so that for me is what led me to stay in that relationship as long. And as many people said, it's time to get rid of him, this, that, and the other. I'm like, you don't understand. I have a calling, this, you know, and I allowed my walk and my faith in God to I use it as an excuse to be there, because what I come to realize today, and what God has made me aware, is that yes, you've crossed paths, but I ended up, and you said this earlier, and I want my listeners to make sure that they're hearing this. I went from keeping God on the pedestal and worshiping God and seeking God for the direction that I needed in the marriage, to where I put my husband on that pedestal. And I started worshiping my husband, and I started idolizing and saying, okay, now it's between him and I. He's got this problem. I'm his wife, and I'm going to do what I can to help him. And I totally took God out of the equation. And I tell in my story, and I tell people all the time, when my husband walked away almost 4 years ago from this marriage, it was a blessing for both of us. Because what it taught me, when you talk about lessons, it helped me open my eyes to see that I needed to bring God back into the equation. I needed to get back and seek God, and remember, God is first, God is always. No matter what relationship, no matter how amazing, no matter how great you think that relationship is or that you want it to be, God must be the one that you seek first, and he must be at the center of it. And as a result of doing that and putting God back on the pedestal and removing my husband from the pedestal, I began to see so much more clearly. Everything that you've spoken about today, I can relate to, and I have to be very transparent and honest. In the midst of being in the relationship as well, I didn't see those things. As much as I'm a clinician, as much as I'm an educator, or as much as I've learned so much and have taught so many people, I too, in the midst of it, didn't see it until he walked away. So I see his walking away not as a bad thing, right? Or like, how could that have happened? But I actually saw him walking away as a blessing. God said you both needed to go your separate ways and continue on your journey, and you both need to seek me, and he will continue to guide us. And it has truly been what I thought was going to be a devastating time in my life when we walked away from each other, turned around and was a blessing for both of us. And it has allowed me to grow a lot closer to God and really have a greater understanding of the narcissistic relationship. So there's no coincidence that you followed down a similar path and found yourself in a relationship just the same, to where we both, as women of God, women of strength. I love when you always say that we are ambassadors for God and we are warriors, right? And despite all of that, we too can be easily manipulated and pulled into the darkness with the blink of an eye.
Oh, 100%. And we know as women of God, when you're on the cusp of a breakthrough, that's when we usually get attacked. So it's no coincidence that he came back into my life when my relationship with God was starting to grow, when God was allowing me to get my voice out there more. You know, when I'm speaking more, I'm learning more, I'm growing more. You know, people are coming back into my life. Good people are coming back into my life. My relationship with my family is back. My relationship with you is back. You know, I'm back at the gym. All of them, I got my structure back, right? And all of a sudden, here he comes again. Here he comes again. I'm clean now. You know, I'm clean. You know, I'm like, you know, and you know, the truth of it is that the dark is I think we talked about this in our last conversation. The dark is not creative, so it just can't. It doesn't create. Right. So he'll always use very similar tactics, you know, to get and pull us back to the dark. And, you know, we all have our own tactics that we're weak with. And for me, it's very similar with you. You know, you're telling me I'm the only one that's there for you. You're telling me that everybody's abandoned you your whole life. And this is the first time you've ever really loved someone. And he's truly in love with me, and blah, 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 blah. Right? It's like, really, man? Like, how many times have I heard this? You know, it finally got to a place where I'm like, okay, like, God kind of stopped me and was like, okay, Nicole, you've been here before, you know, and you know some of my past. He's like, you've been here before. Here's where you're going to have to choose either me, right? Or whatever this is. And obviously I choose God. Amen. And it's now that it's been a little bit of time kind of to sit back and look at it, it's like, holy free holies, what was I thinking? You know, but I learned so much from the experience. And that's really, for me, what life is about. And we always say it's the journey, not the destination. Well, this is part of the journey. And if I had to go dark for a little bit of time just to remind myself what it truly feels like in that realm, you know, so I can become stronger as a woman of God and a spiritual warrior, I'm game. I'll do it.
Well, think about it. I say it all the time. Everything is for purpose, right? So if you hear of all the different testimonies of those who, for many of us who were in active addiction, and you hear our stories today and you're like, oh my God, these are miracles, this, that, and the other. All of these individuals that struggle with this illness had to go down that path. They had to experience what they experienced to be able to come out on the other side, you know, to have talk shows, to give testimonies, you know, to open treatment centers and be other warriors and ambassadors of God, right? Mm-hmm. So what you've experienced is for purpose, because think of what you're doing today. We get to have an opportunity to take our experiences to show people and to show the world. It doesn't matter whether you went to college or you didn't go to college. It doesn't matter, you know, what career you have and how much money you make. We are human beings. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, outside of our logical minds, we are all emotional creatures, right? Mm-hmm. And as a result of how we were raised and how we were influenced, many of us, if not all of us, are lost from our true selves, and we don't really know who we are. Mm. And every last one of us have to fight to get out of the dark and into the light, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I love having you on here, because you take that approach that I think so many more people can truly connect and understand with, right? Mm. So many people are really, I don't want to say frustrated, I think afraid or maybe resistant to God and to church. But I think when we start to talk about energy and we start to talk about spirits and the yin and the yang and the good and the bad and the angels and the devil, right? I think that sort of black and white, right?
Sure.
And we all can identify on some level or another. And I'm sure that there's thousands of people out there that will be listening to this can relate to this on one level or another. So yeah. Your experience was not in vain. While I'm certain very difficult in its moments, and even having to leave the relationship, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's all you wanted, right? You wanted a healthy relationship with this person, this beautiful person. But you get to be able to learn from that and be able to have a message today that hopefully that would prevent other individuals, men or women alike, to rush into a relationship or get into a relationship based on fear.
Yeah.
Right? Or to stay in an unhealthy relationship because maybe we're fearful or we have guilt or we have shame. So I adore you so much. And I have to say that during that experience, I was frustrated. I was frustrated, and not at you. I was frustrated at the darkness. I was frustrated, but I'm always reminded that the enemy will never win. I remind myself that all the time. The enemy will have his moments and he will have his time to play on the playground, but he will not win. And God will always come in and God will always prevail. And so I just sat back and I waited and I prayed and I was patient. And when I got the news of that you were out of that relationship, I just cried. Yeah. I truly cried, because it was that moment that God just prevailed in your life and said, okay, she's had enough. This is not what I had intended for her, but she's learning. And one of the things that I want to leave our listeners with is when we go through these experiences, you know, bad things happen to good people, right? We are not immune to having bad things happen in our lives. But I think what's important is we must learn from them.
Sure.
If you're not drawing some sort of a lesson or learning from these experiences, is it fair to say that we're going to experience it again? Right?
Well, I mean, of course, because you've asked for it, you know. One of the things that I teach and that I do is, you know, the words good and bad, there's like judgment attached. Mm-hmm. So what if things just are? Because if what we consider to be bad moves us to a higher level of being, was it really ever bad? You know, it's the hills and the valleys that we have to go through as humans.
Very true.
You know, and some of us are willing to do it, you know, and some of us are willing to recognize it and go through the storm. And then, you know, once the storm passes, kind of sit back and be like, phew, what just happened? You know, what just happened? Because usually when a storm comes, especially when you've kind of done a lot of work on yourself, the storm hits you real fast. Because if I had time to process what was really going on, I probably would not have moved forward. But literally within 2 months, I was literally staying with him all the time. Within 3, we were engaged. Within 4, we found a venue, you know, and I had to move in because I lived too far away and he couldn't see this relationship working if I didn't move in with him, you know. So it's very strategic on their part, but it's usually very quick because their idea of love is very skewed. So he wanted me here because he wanted that control and he didn't want me to leave him, but it wasn't out of love.
Right.
You know, it
Again,
was
fear. He was fearful as well, right? And so now you actually raise another interesting topic as it relates to relationships that we can definitely do it in our next episode. And that's all about codependent relationships, right? Because I was told that if you meet someone and within 3 to 6 months you move in with them, it must be a codependent relationship.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about, Natashah.
So I think it's a great topic to explore next time. But before we say goodbye today, Nicole, if someone wanted to get in touch with you and wanted to have a conversation with you, wanted to talk to you more about this, because I'm sure there's so many more people out there in the world like are suffering and may still be in those relationships and don't know how to get out, or maybe they're too scared to get out.
Yeah.
How can they get a hold of you so that maybe you can give them some more wisdom and give them some direction on how to find a path, you know, out of that type of unhealthy relationship?
Sure. Well, my email is Dr.nicouz@gmail.com. You can also call me. You know, my number is 561-591-4263. So yeah, I'm here to answer any questions. Again, we're here to learn from each other. We're all students and we're all teachers. So
amen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have heard it and heard it straight from Dr. Nicole Ouzounian. If you guys want to continue this conversation, or maybe you can identify with anything that she's talked about today, and you're seeking some healing in your life, and or you're wanting to figure out how do I get out of this type of a relationship, please feel free. Do not hesitate to pick up the phone and or drop her an email. Introduce yourself, and you won't regret getting to know Dr. Nicole Ouzounian. She is such a beautiful spirit. Her aura is everything. And she's just definitely a woman working for God. And she has nothing but the best for everyone that, you know, crosses her path. So Dr. Nicole Ouzounian, I thank you once again for being part of this recording, this podcast, and sharing yourself with the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Natashah. Bye, everybody.
All right, you guys. So as always, as you know, if you're looking to get in touch with me, you can find me at empoweredvoices45@gmail.com. Also, don't forget the episodes will be launched every week. So please make sure that you're tuning in. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for being loyal listeners, and we'll see you in our next episode. So stay tuned.